I'm from EDINA and Data Library Division of Information Services at University of Edinburgh. EDINA being a just funded data center providing national services for the UK. So to start saying the story continues, because you may have not been in the audience, but we presented our first part of the story about research data management initiatives at University of Edinburgh at this conference in December 2010. So I looked back at what we said then, basically as an narrative device to continue on, knowing that you might not have actually been there. But so at that time, and that wasn't too long ago, but things seem to have changed quite a lot. One of the things we were saying was, okay, funders are starting to make policies here. Publishers are beginning to make requirements about making data available. Non-government organizations and governments and places like the OECD had made a ministerial declaration about the principle of public access to publicly funded research and research data. And we kind of noticed that universities didn't seem to be stepping up to the challenge. There seemed to be this disconnect between what their employees did with their data and what the university felt in terms of that. We also presented where we were at that moment, which was we had results of 2 working groups that had been set up to look at research data storage needs at the university and research data management needs in general, which led to a draft policy, and we presented the content of that draft policy last time. So since then, our policy did pass the powers that be across the university in May 2011, following consultation. And as Catherine has so nicely explained, we felt that EPSRC has really become a game changer for that issue about universities not stepping up to the job, at least in the UK, and I think there were other drivers, from other countries that also influenced the UK. And but that made it quite clear that universities had to, at least universities who wanted to be funded by EPSRC, and University of Edinburgh is certainly one of those, that they needed to take some responsibility, and they couldn't just look the other way and assume that PIs were doing everything that needed to be done. And then the other thing that's happened since then is the JISC Managing Research Data Program, and they have funded policy and infrastructure for UK universities to grapple with this new challenge. We weren't part of that, but we were part of an earlier program. And also the DCC has really helped with, 20 or so institutions with an engagement program. That should say engagement. I have to fix it in the next version of the slides, so Momentum will be busy with different versions on the website. And I don't have time to go into the policy, but this is the Wordle that I did at one point. It's maybe a little bit softer than some that emphasize mandates, but that may be because we were earlier and a little bit more tentative about, but mainly because the policy initiative came out of information services, and we're a bunch of people who are there to support researchers. We're not really there to tell them what to do. So we wanted to support them to do the right thing, so we have a lot of kind of soft terms in there, I think. But it's also an aspirational, it was an aspirational policy, knowing that we didn't have everything in place to implement it. So what's been happening now is we've created a roadmap. It's not specifically an EPSRC roadmap, but it is with that in mind. And it came out of the Information Services Plan. Information Services includes library, NIT, and data library, and DCC. And so, basically it was saying we will do all this stuff, and we will also implement the storage recommendations for the data storage recommendations for our users. And so the roadmap was a nice planning document for us that included a link to strategy and allowed the service managers to take it one step further with full service planning, but something in between that we could talk to stakeholders about. So we think we're going down the right track with this, is this what we should be delivering? And so we have probably the most important part is 15 objectives to match that go along with the 10 policy points. And outcomes, deliverables, and actions across an 18-month period. We'll see how much we can get done in that 18-month period, and then add more deliverables and actions when we're more sure of exactly what shape things will take. So there's 4 strategic areas which I'll describe. I won't go through the whole 15 points that you've read here. But it is a living document so that we can publish new versions, which will say that it's a certain version, once we have the stakeholders on board for newer deliverables. So the governance of this is kind of important. We have our implementation committee, which is kind of the service managers across information services, and DCC's in there because they're kind of, got their headquarters in Edinburgh, although they're not usually focusing on local services. The data library is the local service arm of Edina and data library. So basically, that's to forward the roadmap. And then importantly, we have this academic steering group, which their job is to ensure the services are fit for purpose for academics. For example, they've told us to go ahead with 3 pilots, testing it on certain various user groups across the university to make sure that the services are working for all kinds of researchers. So this is the roadmap in a nutshell. All the 15 objectives fit into these 4 categories. And the idea is data management support is the underlying one that goes right across. So starting with the data management planning, because that's the beginning of the research data lifecycle, or research lifecycle. So that's obviously creating data management plans and getting researchers to think in advance about when and how they're going to share their data at the end. These references about the policy points is just there for reference. I'm not going to belabor that. So the DCC has taken the lead on this part, and they've also taken the lead on the pilot activity as part of that institutional engagement, basically. And Sarah Jones from the University of Glasgow and Kerry Miller from Edinburgh have been helping us with this. And so the tailored DMP assistance for PIs submitting research proposals, they have made themselves available to consult with researchers, for up to an hour about plans. We've had meetings with the Edinburgh Research and Innovation Research Office to find out what kinds of consultancy service would be wanted. And they've been doing a lot of evaluation of the DMP Online tool, which I'll just say a little more about in a minute. And we also are hoping to customize the DMP Online tool, the DCC's DMP Online tool, for Edinburgh, and maybe even school by school, that's what we call our departments, to help them develop their own custom guidance and then embed that form of words in the tool. I think it was on another slide where I mentioned a blog post on the DCC website right now that talks about all the changes going on with DMP Online. Basically, all these pilots had a lot to do with usability testing, and sometimes that can be a painful process, but you have to pay attention to the results of that. So DMP Online and the data repository have all gone through that kind of thing. Active data infrastructure is the important one for a lot of researchers about getting storage that the university provides. So we're going to be the cloud for our researchers. And basically, I can say as little about that as possible, but without skipping that part of the story, because I'm not the expert in that area. And I'm sure your questions are going to be on this, but I may have to refer. So resilience and recovery are the main things that have been looked at, and of course, the cost capacity aspect as well. And so there's ongoing, they're quite at an advanced stage on procurement and discussion with suppliers and the planning. And they basically looked at 3 different scenarios and recommended this one, which sort of gets the most bang for the buck out of the petabyte store by not replicating the whole thing and having it immediately be able to come online if something happens at the JCNB site. These 3 terms across the top are just locations on our campus, so I won't even spell them out. But if some are very important to be replicated right away. Informatics, which is a 5-star research outfit at University of Edinburgh, had a fire about 10 years ago, and so they're pretty twitchy about their resilience and recovery. And so we'll have, that's like about just people who need to have their data up like that if something goes wrong at one site, like something catastrophic. But of course, everything will be backed up onto the offline tape archive, and they've got some technology that brings it up quite quickly, because the first estimates were that it might take months and months to bring it back up from tape. But anyway, so there's some on standby, and that seems to be the perfect compromise for making the most of our money. And if you do want to know more about that, I will put you in touch with Tony Weir from IT Infrastructure. And so data stewardship, moving on quickly, is really things like the data repository. We haven't worked out about the dark archive vault. We know that's what researchers want, but we want them to share their data openly, so we need to work out the interoperability between the active data store and moving it into Edinburgh Data Share, our data repository, which is going to have lots more enhanced bells and whistles, much more user-friendly, both for the depositor and the users. We want to have our data be able to be displayed. We have the Edinburgh College of Art merging in with the University of Edinburgh, so we have new kinds of rich media we need to pay attention to. And then we want to make it interoperable with this CRIS, which keeps track of our research outputs. And so maybe the data asset registry should be part of the CRIS, or maybe it should be part of the repository, and we don't quite know yet. But that's part of the fun of figuring that out. Then we have the consultancy and support services that underlie, or I should say we will. In some cases, we have it. We had online guidance from September 2009, and we recently revamped that and basically streamlined it. We made it smaller rather than bigger, so that it's very punchy for PIs who just want a quick answer to their questions. And then for the students and early career researchers who might want to delve in more to the issues, we have the Mantra online training course. And we've been piloting training with liaison librarians, and we may also do it with IT staff. We need to make sure that the help desk can at least know what to do with these sorts of questions. And there's a rollout plan of all the services. So why do we need awareness raising? My colleague China, who's been working in this area, says researchers are still going around even with the policy having been in place this long. Why has nobody told me about this before? And we need help in keeping up to date, so we need to get out there more. And just ending here, I didn't take any pictures of the services in case it slowed me down, but this was to remind me that I have a glossy handout, which I'd like you all to take some home and hand them out. This is for everyone. It's an online open course. Anyone can step through it. It's aimed at the early career researchers and PhD students. And you can even rebrand it and call it your own if you want to. And these are my co-authors who helped write the full paper that's on the dataset. Thank you.